would like to welcome Father Charles. You've already read his profile, so I'm not going to, read his profile again. He has a good background to actually introduce and bring this discussion for this afternoon. What I would like to tell about Father Charles is that he was my senior for a few years when I was doing my Bachelor's of Theology. And as a young ordained priest, he was a head of a team of priests who were ministering to youths. And it is this mission for youth, this heart for youth, that led him to do his studies in media in US, and then continued to film some movies and things like that. But he continues to work a lot with the youths, and that's why I felt he was the right person, to actually help us discuss. I know many of us have been thinking, how do we help our youngsters, especially who are so engrossed in media and they have their own identity? How do we, reconcile the faiths in our family? So I thought he would be the right person for us to actually animate this discussion. And I welcome Father Charles for this afternoon. We look forward to hear from.
Hi, good evening to all of you. Thank you very much, Priscilla, for this invitation. And I'm glad to be here with you to share a few thoughts about a topic that I'm quite excited about. I mean, as you might have seen, I'm more a filmmaker than media personnel. But this topic of the influence of media and faith and family is very dear to me because of my pastoral ministry as a Catholic priest. And so I'm glad to share with you some of the thoughts that I've put together for this presentation. If you are able to follow me and if you're able to hear me well, then I guess we could proceed. Vincenzo, are we good to go? Okay, great.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, as you might have, as you could see here on the first slide, this evening's presentation has three main topics, one leading into the other. The first one is media. We will have a general understanding about media, its influence on us, and how we are part of this world of media, the digital world. And then how media has influenced our faith, and what is our faith response, especially from the perspective of the Catholic Church. What is the Church's response to the new media? And then we would move on to understanding how media and faith plays a role in our family life, especially when it comes to parenting, and how do we understand the world in which the present generation lives, especially connected with social media. For most of my talk, when I am talking about media, I'm referring to the new media, mostly related to social media, internet, and other forms of current media platforms. So I would like to begin with sharing with you a picture that really fascinated me. Now, you'll recognize this. This was the year 2005, the inauguration of Pope Benedict outside Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Well, this was 2005, and look what happened in 2013, the inauguration of Pope Francis outside the Sistine Chapel. 8 years later, you can see whole loads of smartphones and tablets trying to capture the moment. And this comparison of just a matter of 8 years kind of helps us to understand how swiftly we are moving into the digital age, the speed in which things are progressing. Just to add to what happened that year, if you see in this infograph, you see there's a big growth in smartphones ownership. In the year 2012, it was only 44.8%, and in a year's time, it increased to 73.4%. That's a big jump. And also in terms of ownership of tablets. So you see, there is a big change, and this is 2013, and we are already in 2021. So we can only imagine the kind of growth the new media or technology when it comes to communication is undergoing. So what is media? How do we understand media? Well, as media from the time of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg in 15th century, when for the first time we were able to have printed books that one copy looked similar to the other, to the present age of social media like Facebook, Twitter, the immersive media like AR, that's augmented reality, and VR, that's virtual reality. We've come a long way, right? And just to give us an idea, like where are we now today in terms of usage of internet or smartphone? This is a summary, the digital around the world in 2020. So the population of the world is 7.75 billion, and urbanization is 55%. And unique mobile phone users. And mind you, like a good number of people have more than one phones, and this is unique mobile phone users, and that's 5.19 billion. Penetration rate is 67%. And then the internet use for the year is 4.54 billion, and the penetration rate is 59%. And active social media users are 3.80 billion. That's penetration of 49%. So that kind of gives us an idea of the kind of world we live in and how quickly we have moved into this situation. More than half of the population in the world are actively using social media, and more than half are internet users, and mobile phone has been responsible for this change. And the percentage, this is the average world numbers, but when you move on to countries with a younger population like Asia, the numbers would be very different over there. Just to kind of understand the use of media, this is how we understand generations, right? We have from 1900 to 1924, we have the Great Generation. Then from 25 to 45, we have the traditionalists or the silent generation. Then we have the baby boomers from 46 to 64. And then we have the teenagers or the generation X, that is from 65 to 79. And then we have the Y generation, the millennials. Well, I will belong to that generation, 1980 to 90s, and I guess some of you would be part of that as well. And then we have Generation Z, the iGen or the Centennials, that's from 90s to 2010. And we have one more generation that's post 2012, which we call as Alpha generation. Now, we know this. So how do we understand when it comes to the digital age? Well, there are other terms used in order to understand where we are in terms of digital, in the digital age. It was Mark Prinsky in the year 2011 in his article, Digital Natives and Digital Immigrants. He coined this word, digital natives and digital immigrants. In the article, he describes a generational divide between those who grew up after the technology boom in the 1980s and those who grew up before. So the digital natives are called by many names like millennials and Generation Y. They are born into the digital age. They understand how the digital world works and responds, and they know how to navigate through it. Whereas the digital immigrants are approximately between the age of 40 to 70 years of age, and they are early and late adapters of the Web 2.0. Well, as you know, there's a generational growth in with Web 1 and 2, and now we are in Web 2 or 3.0 technologies. And so most immigrants are born before the existence of digital technology and adopted to it to some extent later in their life. Then there's this third group, which is digital aliens. They are approximately between the age of 45 to 70 years, and they are late adapters, um, and they, to some extent, stepped into Web 2.0 technologies. They are C-suite senior executives and owners that minimally interface with the digital world. For example, they use email, texting, searching, but they are not so familiar with how the digital world completely works and what are the opportunities. Of course, there are exceptions. This is just a kind of a general classification, but there's always exceptions to this. Like, for example, I still remember one of our redemptorists. His name was Father Jim Connolly. This was in the year somewhere between 1997, 98, when computers were just being a household thing. And he was an Irish redemptorist. And I really marveled at his enthusiasm to learn how a computer works. And he would religiously set aside an hour every evening to sit with one of the younger confreres to learn how the computer works. And he didn't use it to make his notes and give out classes. So there's always exceptions to this classification. Then we have digital integrators. They are usually between the age of 25 to 60 years, and they are innovators and early adapters. They make the changes happen. And so you see that's a broad classification right there. Now, how do these generations consume media? What do they do, and what is the interaction with media? Especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, things have kind of accelerated quite a bit, and we see when everything moved to the confines of to their homes, work from home, entertainment from home, interaction from home. Everything happened from the home, from their homes, and as a matter of fact, we are having a session, as part of this period. So how do people consume media? So the Generation Z, most of them are on online videos, and you see a video playing a big role right through the generations that we would see. The 51% of them are consuming online videos, and 38% of them are on online television and streaming, like Netflix and Amazon Prime and other video streaming platforms. Of course, video games is one big thing for them as well, 31%, and broadcast television. And you have other music streaming and other content that's been consumed by Generation Z. How do the millennials consume media? You see the biggest one over there is, again, online video, like YouTube and Vimeo and many other platforms. And you have online television streaming as another big area, that's 41%. Broadcast TV compared to the Generation Z, a little more, 35%. How do the Generation X consume it, like those who are in the age 40 to 54? Like, their biggest consumption is broadcast television, 45%. And then you have online television streaming, it's 38%. It's all video content, as we could see, not so much of a text, but more on in terms of video. In terms of text or literature, it's quite a small number. It's just 21%. And jumping on to the baby boomers, 55 to 75 years of age. Um, there you see the spike over there for broadcast television, whereas the other ones are pretty small. Now, each generation consumes media in different ways, and also each generation's relationship with media is pretty unique. Um, and this kind of gives us an idea, especially as we know, how do the younger generations, the tweens, that is the age between 9 to 12, and the teens, 13 to 19 years of age, how do they consume, and what an amount of time do they spend on their devices? As we could see here, the younger group, that's the age group between 9 to 12, the tweens, just before the teenagers, they spend a good amount of time on mobile phones, totally 4 hours 36 minutes a day screen media. Um, and you'll see a good amount of time is spent on television sets, and then on tablets is 56%, and then smartphones. These three take the big chunk of their time. And when it comes to the teenagers, again, you see the numbers increasing there. They spend almost 6 hours 40 minutes every day. Total amount of mobile media is around 4 hours 12 minutes, and mobile screen media is around 3 hours 1 minute. So you see the amount of time that's spent. What do they do? What are the favorite things for them to do? This is kind of a peek into the digital world of our younger generation. So what are the favorite things to do? Well, the most numbered one here is among the tweens is playing video games, and among the teens is 15%. Reading is 16%. Again, you see, reading also includes all platforms that has text, including social media, Facebook, Twitter, and the news aggregators where they get the news from. So watching television is 13% and 9%, and listening to music 10%. And whereas the teens spend way more time on listening to music, 30%, and watching online videos is 10% and 6%. So you see, this is a good amount of time that's spent on the screen, and this is what the tweens and the teens spend their time on. And you see there's a gradual decrease and change in the way media and the consumption is media is working as well. Like as you see in the early 10 years ago, 2011, the biggest consumption was magazines, and even till today it remains. But again, you see the big change. It is the mobile internet that has taken over, and as a matter of fact, probably it would have been a reality for many of you as well. We've stopped subscribing to magazines. We've stopped subscribing to newspapers, and we have migrated to digital forms of consuming news, like on our tablets or on our phones, which is easily accessible and very much current. And of course, keeping in mind the environmental protection as well with use of paper. So many have become very conscious of that as well. So that has also helped in the increase of the use of mobile internet. Now, this change can also be seen here in terms of how do we get our news first through our smartphones. And this survey is based in UK and US. And you see, most of us, 48% in UK get their news from news websites or apps, and in the US it's the social media, 48%. And so it depends on where we live and what is the cultural aspect that determines our consumption of media as well. Okay, just to be more specific about social media, what is social media? Well, social media is generally a product of new media technology built with the logic of extremely interactive platforms where users congregate, interact, share, create, and or exchange information, like information that could include news, beliefs, values, faith, personal life stories, and experiences. And they do that through the use of texts, photos, sounds, and videos. As we could see in a summary, we could say like online communication that use special techniques that involve participation, conversation. These are very important key factors that color social media, sharing, collaboration, and that could network and link each other. And there is also this term used, prosumers. In other words, the consumers are also the producers of the content. That separation between the producers of the content and the consumers is blurred. The ones who consume are also the ones who are producing the content. Um, and to understand some of the most used social media platforms, this is October 2020. And the most used social media platform is Facebook, and the numbers are staggering. It's Facebook has more than 2 billion and 700 million users, and YouTube has around 2 billion, and WhatsApp has 2 billion, and then Facebook Messenger has around 1 billion 300 1.3 billion, and the list goes on. And I just want to draw your attention to these numbers, and I'll come back to it later. Just see the numbers here. Facebook, which also owns WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, by itself, it has the market share. That's really scary, the kind of control that they have on social media. Okay, so what's the purpose of media in general? Basically, it provides us information. Like we have Wikipedia, anything under the sun, you just type and you can get some information about. And we get our news from media sources, live casts, like what we are doing right now, and education for sure. And some would argue the first thing that would come to their mind when it comes to media is entertainment, and rightly so. And again, the lines are blurring now between education and entertainment, like information and entertainment. You have categories of infotainment, wherein information is rolled out, packaged with entertainment and humor. Also, media covers the area of social forums, where it helps people to come together and share ideas and build communities. To some extent, it also acts as a watchdog for governments and business and other institutions. For example, if you decades ago, like the Watergate scandal in the US came to light because of the news media that brought to light news about the scandal. And even today, the governments are afraid of media because they work as a watchdog, and that's the reason a good number of governments try to curtail or control the media platforms, and also a good number of them will use it for their benefit. One of the changes that happened, especially moving into the new media, is the way media itself is understood. It was Marshall McLuhan who famously coined this word, this phrase, the medium is the message. What did he mean by that? Well, this media theorist, McLuhan, he meant that every medium delivers information in a different way, and that content is fundamentally shaped by the medium of transmission. For example, although television news has the advantage of offering video and live coverage, making a story come alive more vividly, it is also a faster-paced medium. That means more stories get covered in less depth. A story told on television will probably be flashier, less in depth, and with less context than some story covered in a monthly magazine. Therefore, people who get the majority of their news from television may have a particular view of the world, shaped not by the content of what they watch, but its medium. In other words, the message could be the same, but when different platforms or different mediums try to communicate that message, the message takes on its own shape, depending on the medium. I just want to share a quote which kind of gives an idea about how television shapes news and what its goal of when it comes to formatting its content. This was Robert McNeil who said in 1980s. The idea is to keep everything brief, not to strain the attention of anyone, but instead to provide constant stimulation through variety, novelty, action, and movement. You're required to pay attention to no concept, no character, and no problem for more than a few seconds at a time. Bite-sized is best. Complexity must be avoided. Nuances are dispensable. Qualifications impede the simple message. Visual stimulation is a substitute for thought, and verbal precision is an anachronism. Well, it kind of gives us a glimpse into how uniquely each medium tries to shape its content. Okay, that was kind of a brief understanding about media and how we are part of this digital age. And now we will step into understanding how the church has responded to this reality of media. Am I good so far? Are you able to follow me? Shall we continue? Okay. Now, how has the church, thank you, how has the church responded to this reality of media? Well, as being a big institution, we have had our growth. You know, to start off with, the document that came out in 1936 by Pope Pius XI. This was in the context of motion pictures, and the document was named Vigilante Cura, which is care, vigilant care, was written out of concern for the lamentable development of the use of cinema and the portrayal of sin and vice. And to quote from there, it is urgently necessary that all progress made by God's favor in human learning and technology actually contribute to God's glory, the salvation of souls, and the spreading of the kingdom of Jesus Christ in such wise that we may all, as the church bids us pray, so pass through the things of time that we may not lose those things that are eternal. One could understand the sentiments behind this document. It's more of a concern, a warning signal sent forth by the church. And also, church always has this role to be the moral guardian of the world and to be the world's conscience. And in playing that role, this early document, speaking about media, you see trying to wave a red flag and calling, and the most important message here was to call for responsibility. And though this message does hold value even to this day in terms of church's response to media, but of course we have moved on to involve ourselves into the world of media, not just stand outside and to speak about it. The first official document that came out which really spoke about media was Miranda Process, that was to say the wonderful. It came out in 1957 by Pope Pius XII. He recognized a broad scope of media arts to include the radio, television, cinema, and opens itself to further innovations. And this was the first time, as it were, a positive note in terms of welcoming the growth of media and technology, and to comfortably acknowledge the positive effect of it. Considered media as gifts from God, breaking down the perceived distrust. And media should be used to benefit three main functions: announcing the news, educating, and entertaining. And then finally, it noted that through media, we need to promote and perfect human life and morals. This was the first early response of the church. Then we have in the year 1963, we have the Vatican Council, in the Vatican Council document, Inter Mirifica, on the means of social media, said, the church recognizes that if properly utilized, the press, television, radio, movies, and other media can be of great service to mankind, since they greatly contribute to men's entertainment and instruction, as well as to the spread and support of the kingdom of God. So again, there is a positive note, as Vatican II brought in a lot of changes, and one positive change that the Vatican II reflected is surely in terms of embracing the world of media and its use, and how we are called to participate in this world of media. Then we have Pope John Paul II, and Pope John Paul II was also one of them who really opened his arms to welcome change and to welcome progress. On 36th World Communication Day, 2002, he would say that internet is a new form for proclaiming the gospel. And in his apostolic letter, A Rapid Development, in 2005, he would say, we must enter into this modern and ever more replete communications network with realism and confidence, convinced that if it is used with competence and conscious responsibility, it can offer useful opportunities for spreading the gospel message. Here he says today's powerful media, that is in Vita Consecrata, which he does point out to in his document about consecrated life, how we as consecrated people also are called to use media. He would say, like, consecrated persons belonging to institutions having the charism of using the mass media have a particular responsibility in this regard, spiritually and professionally formed towards this end. These institutions should willingly lend their help wherever pastorally appropriate, in order to offset the inappropriate use of the media and to promote higher quality programs, the contents of which will be respectful of the moral law and rich in human and Christian values. And this is a great move. As I said, now the church doesn't see itself as one who can stand out, but rather who needs to be inside, to be present in this digital world, and asking the religious and the clergy and the hierarchy in the church not to shy away, but rather to be part of this development was a good move forward. Of course, we have Pope Benedict the 16th. On the 2009 World Day of Communication, he spoke of the digital continent. He said, I ask you to introduce into the culture of this new environment of communications and information technology, the values on which you have built your lives. And again, he's speaking about Christian values that needs to permeate through digital media. He also said the accessibility of mobile telephones and computers, combined with the global reach and penetration of the internet, has opened up a range of means of communication that permit the almost instantaneous communication of words and images. And again, Pope Francis endorses the same idea of the church being part of this digital world, and how we have the responsibility of building relationships in this world of internet and social media. I'll skip this. Let's we'll run out of time. And again, we have few other church documents. Of Pope Francis, and we'll skip that for now. Just to kind of get an idea, how many minutes do I have so that I could time myself?
Normally it would be until about 3 o'clock, so you got about another 15-20 minutes.
Okay, that's including question and answer session?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So, okay, let me skip on to some important things perhaps would be more valuable for you. The third aspect of family is to understand how, especially as Christian families, how does media affect us, and what do we do, especially when it comes to understanding the younger generation, our children and grandchildren, and how do we accompany and journey along with them. There are a few aspects that we have to keep in mind when it comes to families. And again, when I'm talking about families, I'm basically talking about individuals and the way they interact, relationships, and then the way we form communities. There are a few things that is important for us to keep in mind. The first thing is, as individuals who are present on social media or the internet, we live in a very customized world, which is overly customized in terms of the way we receive information. Like, as you may know, when it comes to Google search, the results that I get when I do a Google search from my browser would be different from the kind of results you would get when you search on your browser. The reason being, Google customizes the kind with its logarithms how each one of us receive information. It's based on the way we have accessed information, our likes, our dislikes, our political views, and therefore a whole lot of information is customized for each one of us. We seem to each one of us live in a kind of a bubble of our own making. There is also a kind of, for example, this personalized daily newspaper. For example, there's a newspaper called paper.li. What it does is, using your social media platforms and your browsing history, it personalizes a newspaper for you. Like, for example, you would be able to see your friend going on a vacation right next to a column with the results of the elections. You'll never be able to get a local newspaper with that kind of a customization now. That's what digital media does. It customizes everything for us. And it can also lead to a sense of digital tribalism. What is it? Apart from family ties and close friends, with the use of technology, genomes and beliefs and lifestyle choices can become the basis of affinities. Like, people can form communities based using technology, and kind of creating a global tribalism. This was noted by Christine Rosen, who was a social critic. This also leads us to understand how do we identify ourselves. There's a particular digital identity that we form for ourselves, and it many times causes confusion with our real identity. So what is digital identity? Milad Dewey describes it as fundamentally polyphonic, multiple and diverse, allowing for more complexity and pseudo-anonymity, and notes that it is a function, in part, of the ways in which it is developed, acknowledged, recognized, and ultimately authenticated. In other words, when people spend time on the internet, on social media, or gaming platforms, they have the ability to build their own persona, profiles, avatar that they want to identify themselves with and the way they want themselves to be perceived or identified by others. For example, there's a platform called Second Life. It's a kind of a game wherein you create an avatar of yourself and you basically do things that you would rather do in a real life. You find friends, you make friends, you buy things, you sell things, and you build an apartment for yourself, and you live there in this virtual world. And especially with the development with augmented reality, AR and VR, virtual reality, this is taken to another level, wherein the virtual reality becomes so much part of our lives that could lead to kind of a confusion between our real identity and a virtual identity. And we are part of their script in this entire social interaction. So how do parents and children need to understand this reality? Now, it's very important for parents to develop new skills in this digital world. As they say, the internet is the third place where children interact and spend most of their time. Apart from home and school, internet is the third place. And as parents, you take a lot of trouble to monitor wherever your kids are, what kind of school they go to, when they're at home, who's at home. We don't just let anyone into our homes. In the same way, when children are present online, it's very important to journey with them. And for that reason, we need to train ourselves and acquire new skills. And it's very important to train our children with media education. Of course, schools do this to a great extent, but it's also very important that this be done from a home context as well. What does it mean? To train your children, your teens, to access media, critically evaluate it. Well, they may be able to access it, but to critically evaluate it and to understand the nuances of social interaction is very important and has to be parented. And again, media literacy is very important. I guess this is usually covered in the school, wherein children are equipped to they're able to describe the media, and to analyze it and to interpret it, and also to evaluate and to engage with it. The basics of basic steps for media literacy. And I'd like to conclude with 2 slides now. One thing which is very important is the actual threats that exist on media for our children, especially when it comes to online threats. This was a survey made with the help of 25,000+ participants, wherein children in 25 countries in Europe, in the European Union, researchers report that over half of them, that's more than 55%, between the age group of 9 to 16 years old respondents, believe that the internet contains material or poses issues that are problematic for children. So what are the problems that they face? 40% of children identified pornography or violent content as their first concern. 19% of them pointed out that along with aggressive conduct, cyberbullying and other conduct-based problems cited as additional issues troubling them. And almost 32%, that's 1/3 of them, pointed to video sharing sites like YouTube as primarily places where they encountered the issue they feared. And finally, children viewed social networking sites and online games as less likely to generate problems, citing them only 13 and 10% of their time, respectively. Now, a few years ago, I did a documentary called Trafficked in the US. It was mostly an educational documentary, and one segment of it was what should parents know about human trafficking. And having done my research in this area and having interviewed a whole lot of parents, one thing that is very important for us to know is crime is digital. A whole lot of things that used to happen in the physical world have greatly moved to the digital world, and threats are real but very subtle, and therefore it's very important for parents to exercise their duties and the parenting roles online as well. So I would like to leave you with a few basic tips for parents, especially working with children, to first and foremost understand the generation. Like earlier in the talk, I went through the way each generation consumes media, and that also builds a different kind of relationship. Their brains are wired differently. Each generation, along with their relationship to media, their brains are wired differently, and therefore it's very important for us to understand our generation that we are dealing with. And secondly, it's very important to have a customized monitoring depending on the age of your child, to monitor the child's online activity. Like as simple as we won't just let anyone come into our homes, do we? No. In the same way, when it comes to the internet, your children are interacting with a whole lot of real people, but virtually present. And it's very important for parents to monitor, especially the younger group. And therefore, to be present and to interact in the child's digital space as a parent. Now, this is another challenge, especially with lack of time and, of course, lack of interest in the digital world that your children might be more involved in. There is a kind of an hesitation to enter into your children's digital space. It is very important. Privacy is important. At the same time, accompaniment is very important as well. And it is also important to help families to develop a sense of detachment, or a sense to introduce digital fasting. Like, for example, in our own community, like in New York, where we have a group of youngsters who are preparing themselves for priesthood. They are between the age group of 18 to 24. And one thing that they do is on their monthly recollection day, they come in the morning and they leave their mobile phones right at the altar, and they would not use it till the end of the day. It's kind of fasting from digital media, and it also helps them to disconnect and also connect with reality. And mind you, they find it very, very difficult, and that's the purpose of the exercise as well. And therefore, it's very important also for us as families to find time and space, a scheduled time and space, to digitally detach and to physically interact with one another. Like vacations are a great time, or just to take some time off on a Sunday evening to play a board game or something, or very importantly, as spiritual entities or families that are faith-based. Very important for us to interact, to come together for prayer, and also to have a faith sharing session. So these could be some ways that we could really have a very meaningful and a purpose-filled interaction with the digital world that we live in. So that brings to the end of my presentation. I know I've taken more time than I should have. So I'll leave it open for you if you may have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them.
So just to let everyone know, we put in the chat, Father, as well, that we will keep going a little bit more. We started a bit late. So here's the opportunity now for people to ask questions based on what you've shared with us. So the floor is open. Whoever has a question, you can microphone or use the chat.
Father?
Yes, go ahead.
Just one question. I'm a concerned grandmother more than a concerned parent. But because of course I've seen the difference between the two generations, between my children's generation and what's going on now with my grandchildren's generation. And with my children's generation, it was all about computers, laptops were just becoming fashionable, and it was all about television as well, the influence of television, the influence of this new fad that was laptops. For me, it was really important to discipline my children and not allow them to get carried away with these things, which I was able to do. But now I see what's happening with my grandchildren. And indeed, what's happening with us as adults is that we are completely hooked on these smartphones and on our devices, and everything is happening on devices. I mean, we're on a device now. Thankfully,
Right.
there's the good side and the difficult side, as you've shown in your presentation. But for the children, I saw a huge difference in behavior patterns with my older grandchildren from before they started using devices to now after using devices. And there's a lot of anxiety. My children, thank goodness, have understood that they need to act, and that they've done exactly what you stipulated in one of your presentations, one of these slides. You said that it's important to specify specific times for when
Right.
they can be on and when they need to be off, and to really be disciplined about that, and also to be very active about what they are doing. When I went to visit my family recently, they live in a different country, I went to visit them. I actively sat down with my granddaughter and watched her play the game and understood what it is she was doing and what was going on in this game. And I think that creates a rapport, which a lot of parents don't always take the time to do. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
That's very true, and thank you, Geraldine, for sharing that insight, especially when it comes to parenting, or also as you as a grandparent. It's very important for us to enter into the children's world, and it's only by understanding we'll be able to journey along with them. And of course, the easy solution, or rather the wrong thing to do, is to just kind of forcefully remove devices from children's hands. Well, that won't work for a longer period. But it is to kind of journey along and help them make the decision gradually by putting things in place like schedule time and rules, digital rules for the family that all need to follow. Yes. Any other questions? Or even if you have any comment to make or share your own insight, you're most welcome to do so.
There's one message in the chat. I don't know if you could see that. That's from...
Let me see that. Thank you, Father. Can I ask you to share why you chose the medium of documentary to reflect on Christ? Do you amplify your message from the documentary through social media? Okay, I can answer that. For me, documentary filmmaking came natural because it has its own foundation in reality, and also the theme that I was working on, which was first on human trafficking, and then my second documentary film was on migration and immigration. It was titled "Who's My Neighbor?" The theme lent itself to be narrated in a documentary format, and that's the reason I chose that. And of course, though both the topics were connected with social issues, but for me, it was very much faith-based. What would be our response as the church, as Christians, to these two issues? And again, it was very much based with the church group and a Christian response to the two issues. And and especially the new media gives a new meaning to documentary filmmaking as well, because as we know, reality shows is a big thing in media now, and documentary also with its realism does capture the mind of our audience. Yes.
With regards to like the church and the social media, would you say the church is up to date with social media and how to tackle it, or is it kind of behind? I'm just conscious of the fact of lots of ideas came to mind during your talk about how we get messages from the social media, and some of it
Right.
we have to think twice. Is it really true? But do you think the
Yes.
church should be doing much more using this media?
To answer the question directly, I would say yes. We have a long way to go, and we've moved from being using of media, and now we have begun, at least just recently, to talk about being participants in the digital world. That is, to make ourselves present, not just use media for evangelization, but rather to be present in the world of media and be evangelizers in the digital realm. And that understanding itself came quite late, and we are right there. But surely we have a long way to go. One thing that I always keep asking myself, when it came to media, all throughout history, the church has always been the pioneer, be it architecture, or painting, or when it came to even radio, for that matter. It was a church that took it on first and then ran with it. But unfortunately, somehow we should accept, as the church, especially as the Catholic Church, we have a long way to go, and there's so much that needs to be done. And I'm also part of this commission for media strategic planning with our congregation in Rome, and we also have some sessions with that's connected with Vatican. There is a sense of urgency in the mind of the church, but of course there's this sense of we don't know how to handle this as yet, and we are still there. And I hope and pray that as we go forward, especially with the involvement of laity, we will be able to respond and to be present in this digital world more concretely, and bearing the fruit of Christian values. Yeah.
Father, I have a question.
Yes, Priscilla.
I'm just thinking, I have a friend whose son is a teenager now. But when he was tweets, that's where you see, you were talking about, that's when they spend a lot of time playing video games. They're just introduced, you're allowing them to have their identity in the social media. And at that point, the mother said, yeah, you can play games and whatever, but did not take, did not really look into what kind of games he was playing or whatever. And now he's a teenager. He was one of the brilliant students in his class, almost, first and in just second or whatever. And now he's getting like single digits in his marks, while there is so much, fights between his mom and him because he wants to play video games. There is this almost addiction, if I may use that word, for these games.
Yes, yes.
And when she went and saw what he was playing, I think one of the things that she told me was Fortnite. I don't know much about this, but and it was about, obviously, we all know that there are lots of guns and violent feelings. So she feels,
Violence. Yeah.
yeah, the way his attitude is, apparently she feels it's changed because of the kind of games that he's playing, and his interaction between his mother. The family kind of has changed, and she finds it really challenging, and she feels a little helpless at this moment, and she feels, I should have, before introducing him to social media, I should have first of all herself have a knowledge of, okay, what are these games, and what effects they have, and what kind of games that I want my son or daughter to actually play or whatever, something like that. So I just wanted to bring to your what do you think about such situation? I'm sure
Yeah.
you would have come across few of these.
Yeah. There are two responses that's very important for us to keep in mind. Again, the first reality is a whole lot of times parents find it difficult or almost not possible to educate themselves to understand the digital tools that children are using, be it video games or social media platforms. Every day there's a new thing, and it's almost impossible for parents to understand them and to monitor them. And in these situations, it's very important. What parents need to do is to first equip their children about the dangers that they could end up in other words, media education. Like, for example, depending on the age of the children, they need to be made aware of the dangers that are involved. One thing is surely that has happened is addiction, and you may know that any media, even for us, when it comes to interacting with our screens, there is a relational addiction over there. That's something new that pops up and that connects to our the dopamine effect that it has on our brains at a very subtle manner. But again, the more exciting and emotionally engaging these the video games or content are, it's more addictive. And therefore, it's very important for parents to educate their children before allowing them to completely engage themselves into these. And it's very important for them to monitor, very, very important to monitor. And also when it comes to social interaction, these are the symptoms when they're unable to kind of interact with their family members or friends, and they're all the time stuck to their screens. These are symptoms and possibly greater struggle that's going on within the child's life, and how the child is unable to handle these changes that are happening. And to a great extent, the child is helpless in these situations, and it's the responsibility of the parents in some way to monitor right at the beginning and to journey along with them as well.
Father, if I could just say that I think your parenting tips are wonderful. They're exactly what parents should be doing. But in the situation that Priscilla has just explained, it's already gone much further.
Too far.
So what do you do in that situation? What would be your advice?
Yeah. Depending on the gravity of the problem. Sometimes children, like what I understand with the example of given by Priscilla, it is an acute one, and surely they may have to get professional help. There are already in schools wherein counseling have introduced to help children to distance, or it's kind of a de-addiction programs, as we could say, wherein children need to go through this program to understand and to kind of help them to distance themselves from this. So surely one way out is to kind of get professional help depending on the situation. And if things are not really out there, then probably the detox is a way forward as well. If so far the families have not been able to really help children to get into a disciplined use of digital media, it's important they gradually start somewhere and gradually make it pattern in their family lives, and so that children also. And again, it is very important to understand that though children are addicted and they find themselves too hooked onto these devices, internally there is a kind of repulsion as well within them, because they are hurting inside. And a lot of researchers have shown that, and even some of the researchers that I've shown of threats of children, it is children responding and saying that yes, it is true and we are struggling. So it's very important to recognize those areas where children are struggling, and parents, rather than monitors, approach the issue as aids in trying to help children to grow and come out of their pains and or addictions, and therefore from case to case basis, a response need to be it needs to be handled differently. Yeah.
Father, if I might bring one more situation just to help all of us here, if that's okay. Quickly, I have another friend who has a single only child, and so from the little age, as a toddler, the person was given iPad and used kind of interacting only with the media so much that now he's a teenager, but over the years I've seen that this child is unable to actually contact or have a proper conversation with the other people in a normal way, like what a child would. Even to say hello to that child's cousin or aunt or uncle, the mother has to say, "Come on, say hello," and I have a feeling that could this be a connection because a child is spending so much time on these phone and iPad and whatever, that would you think that could be one of the root cause, that the child is not able to actually have this normal conversation that you would actually see in a child?
Absolutely, that does have an effect. There's no doubt about it. As I indicated in the earlier slide, that when there's a confusion of digital presence and real world, and when children are comfortable in the digital world, and they have kind of acquired a kind of a persona for themselves, and they have picked up skills how to navigate in the digital world. Whereas when they are put into a new realm of reality, which they are not aware of, or they have not kind of figured out how to handle the real life, their social behavior is going to be awkward. And surely there's a direct connection between the use of digital devices and, if we have to say, a kind of awkward social behavior. And therefore, it is very important, that's exactly the point what I was trying to make, is it's very important that parents include and schedule time that they are away from digital devices, and they take time to socially interact in the right way, or in a physical reality. And if the situation kind of is serious, then surely they need to get help, professional help.
Okay.
Thank you, Father.
Another question in the chat.
Yes, requesting for if there's any publication. Like most of my research that I have here are based on news, or recent publications in terms of magazines and journals, because the topic is so evolving and so quickly evolving. What I could do is I could do a little bit of a research and see what best could answer. Right on the top of my head, I don't have a publication that could help answer that question, but I could look for something and maybe suggest.
Yeah, you can email it to me later when you find something, Father. Then I can actually pass that on to the parents.
I can do that. Sure.
I two points you mentioned, the idea of this detox. I was reading a novel. It was a humorous one, but it was focused on adults who went through this process of detoxing. They were living on Facebook and Twitter all the time, and it was taken away from them. And it was the whole story of how they kind of went through that, and the pains that they had to endure to get off it. But then they actually came back to like community life, that they actually were interacting much more with people at a completely different level that they'd forgotten about. And I think within the family, that's also something where the children also take action, or take or follow on from their parents. If their parents are also doing the same thing, even if it's for work purposes, but the children see them constantly on the phone or on the laptops, etc. Especially these days when you're having to work from home, that even parents sometimes don't find the proper cutoff for themselves. And then if they don't show the example, then it becomes difficult, I think, to pass that down to the children as well.
Absolutely. And to add what you just said, addiction, or rather attachment to devices, especially the mobile phones, is real, not just for the younger group, but also to all age groups. You know, sometimes it'll be surprising, like even with our own, some of our conference, we kind of later on took some time to understand how to use a mobile phone, and you would see them endlessly spending time on their devices once they realize what they can do with it. So that is real for each one of us. And therefore, it's very, one thing that I've not mentioned here is digital etiquette that I didn't go into. It's very important for each family to train as a family with a set of digital etiquette. Like, for example, like there are restaurants that I've been to wherein when families come in, they give you a basket, and you're requested to put your mobile phones into the basket, and they would give it back to you at the end of the meal. And if the families do oblige to do that, they give a complimentary dish, you know, just to encourage families to sit together and enjoy a meal without being engaged with their phones. You know, and it's very important for us as well. Like when we sit together for meals, like we make a policy for ourselves that we have meals and we don't carry our mobile phones to the table. Just leave it back in our rooms and spend time together. Simple things like this, or even finding a scheduled time to turn off the Wi-Fi after a particular time, you know, or a particular day on a Sunday from this time to this time, to schedule a particular time to cut off from the digital or the world of internet, and to physically be present for one another. So these basic digital etiquettes are very important for us to first and foremost be faithful by ourselves, set an example, and also help children inculcate it as well.
Okay. Well, as you can read in the chat, I think everyone can read, both Peter and Meredith, they expressed their deep thanks and gratitude on behalf of the parish for your time and sharing your perspective and wisdom. And thank you very much for this. I think, yes, it will spark some good conversations afterwards, especially around the dinner table this evening. We have recorded this session, so we will make it available. So that's very kind of you to allow us to do that, Father. And we
Sure. Most welcome.
And on behalf of OLM, thank you very much for your time and for sharing this very stimulating topic and interest in how it's progressed over these years in terms of social media and what we need to do to get ourselves back on track.
Thank you very much. I did enjoy presenting it. Of course, the way it is set, there's no way I could see you or how the talk went down, but I guess it did have some information for you. And do keep me in your prayers for my ministry. And if that is it, then I would request that we could end the session with a small prayer, if that is okay.
Yep.
Perhaps we can put our cameras on just to say thank you to Father.
Yes, yeah. If everyone would like to switch the cameras on.
Henry, you're right. Hi.
Hi there. Great. Good. Thank you so much. Let's say a small prayer to end the session. I know we've kind of gone, and my apologies for the extra time. I was trying to fit in a lot of information within. Let's conclude with a small prayer. Loving Lord Jesus, we thank you for this evening, for bringing us together virtually. You are the true message and you are the true messenger from the Father, and your messages of love. As we were reminded in today's liturgy, that the Father sent you out of love for us to save us. And we believe, Lord, that all that we have, every tool for interaction, social media, technology, is all meant for one purpose. It is to unite us to you and to one another in love. And this evening, as Christian families that we have come together, I pray that even as we participate and live and work in this sphere of media and digital age, may we have the strength of your Spirit. We may discern well, and we may be able to be the light that you call us to be, not just for ourselves, but to the entire world, in the way we interact, in the way we represent truth, in the way we challenge lies and fake news, in the way we conduct ourselves. May we be your light in this digital world, and be specially surrendered